It is a moonlit night in August 1944. A strict curfew has emptied the streets of Paris, leaving only the echoing footsteps of German patrols. A French family scurries through the narrow, winding back streets. But as the sun stumbles on a loose stone, the family freezes, knowing they have only seconds before disaster. 4 years earlier, the French capitulation in June 1940 had sent shockwaves through the country, triggering a massive civilian exodus. Paris, a vibrant capital of 3 million people before the war, saw its population fall to just 800,000 as residents fled the approaching German army. Following the surrender, the nation was carved up. The German military occupied the north. In the south, a puppet regime led by Marshal Philippe Pétain was established, known as Vichy France. Even the Italians were granted a small occupation zone. The occupiers immediately began manipulating the physical reality of French citizens. One of the first host of rules brought French clocks forward by 1 hour, prolonging the morning darkness to align the country's rhythm with Berlin. This mandate meant that every time a citizen checked their watch, they were reminded of who was now in charge. It was the first of many regulations designed to make the German presence inescapable, turning the passage of time into an instrument of the state. The armistice also included a devastating economic mandate, an arbitrarily fixed exchange rate between the French franc and the German Reichsmark at a ratio of 20-1. This inflated the buying power of the occupying forces. Even a low-ranking German private could suddenly afford to empty local shops of cheese and wine. Daily baggage trains left France loaded with luxury items, exotic foodstuffs, and priceless art, legally purchased with heavily favored currency. This plundering led directly to the paperwork seen here, official German-issued ration cards. These granular grids of stamps became increasingly restrictive, cutting the daily caloric intake for French adults to between 1,200 and 1,500 calories. While German citizens were still consuming a healthy 2,000 calories a day, the French faced starvation diets. To survive the immense bureaucracy required just to get basic provisions, locals were forced to turn to an illegal black market, where farmers risked imprisonment to sell hoarded goods at exorbitant prices. The severe material pressure served a dual purpose. A hungry, impoverished population spending all its energy sourcing basic survival supplies has little capacity to organize or sustain a rebellion. Germany also held another powerful point of leverage. A specific clause in the armistice allowed them to retain nearly 2 million captured French soldiers. These men were kept in Germany as permanent hostages to ensure French compliance. As the Axis lost men to the meat grinder of the Eastern Front, they needed replacement workers to keep their factories running. In 1942, Hitler appointed this man, Fritz Sauckel, to secure foreign labor by any means necessary, earning him the nickname the Slaver of Europe. Sauckel's first initiative was a program called the Relève, or Relief Shift. The premise was straightforward. For every 3 French laborers who volunteered to work in German factories, 1 French prisoner of war would be released. The Vichy government eagerly spun this as an act of supreme patriotism. Propaganda posters like this one framed working abroad as a selfless sacrifice, depicting strong laborers building a protective wall for the nation and reuniting families. But the public saw through the marketing. When the Relève program fell hundreds of thousands of volunteers short of the required quotas, the occupiers abandoned the illusion of cooperation and turned to direct force. In early 1943, Sauckel pressured the Vichy government into endorsing a new decree, the Compulsory Work Service, or STO. It required all healthy males between the ages of 18 and 50 and single females between 21 and 35 to submit to forced labor for the Reich. Faced with the prospect of slave labor in hostile territory, tens of thousands of French citizens made a life-altering choice. Instead of boarding trains bound for German industrial centers, they grabbed whatever they could carry and fled into the countryside. This ultimatum left thousands with no middle ground. To avoid deportation, these men and women became fugitives in their own country, and as they sought refuge in the woods and mountains, they transformed a fractured movement into a massive, desperate army. These fleeing draft dodgers became the Maquis, a name taken from a Corsican word for the rough, elevated brushland dominating rural France. Taking cover in the wilderness, they organized into an armed partisan movement, launching sabotage operations and harassing supply lines. The German response was swift and merciless. Their policy of collective punishment quickly escalated from executing the families of known partisans to indiscriminate massacres, wiping out entire civilian villages under the direction of the SS and Gestapo. Adding to the terror were the Milice. This French fascist paramilitary force actively collaborated with the occupiers, hunting down their fellow countrymen and engaging in torture to extract intelligence in exchange for better rations and exemption from the labor drafts. The occupation had deeply fractured the country. Rural communities found themselves caught in a bloody struggle, pitting French citizens against both a foreign invader and each other. The German stranglehold finally broke in the summer of 1944. As Allied forces advanced following the Normandy landings, armed civilian uprisings erupted on the streets of Paris. Using smuggled weapons and sheer numerical superiority, the resistance isolated the remaining occupying forces. But freedom came at a staggering cost. Over 150,000 civilians died during the occupation. In the aftermath, a wave of legal purges and vigilante justice swept the liberated nation, resulting in the trials and executions of roughly 10,000 collaborators. Today, the physical scars of those years remain visible. The village of Oradour-sur-Glane was completely destroyed, and its inhabitants massacred by the SS. It was never rebuilt, left intentionally untouched as a monument to those who perished. The occupation was intended to turn France into a quiet, efficient engine for the German war machine. Instead, the relentless pressure of the regime turned a defeated population into a volatile front that the occupiers could no longer contain.